So, should you buy Strange Antiquities in 2025? Alright, so I actually got my hands on a review copy of Strange Antiquities, and I've been putting in some hours. And honestly, this game is kind of weird for me to judge in 2025, because on one hand, it does a few things that really surprised me, even compared to some other games in the genre, but at the same time, there were moments where I sat there thinking, wow, this has definitely aged. So today in this video we're going to break down whether it's worth your time and money, because yeah, it might actually surprise you. But first, if you enjoy the up-to-date game reviews and wanna support the channel in a way, please make sure to subscribe. When I first jumped back into Strange Antiquities, the first thing that hit me right away was the setting. It's got this dusty, almost forgotten-like world vibe. It's like walking through ruins, but it still feels alive, and honestly, this hooked me quicker than I expected. The story itself is a little old school in its pacing, and there are moments when the dialogue feels like it's stuck in 2010. The characters delivering these long, dramatic lines that don't always land. But then you'll stumble across a part of the world that just clicks. In my playthrough, I remember wandering into a broken temple, where the game barely explained what was going on, but the atmosphere absolutely sold it for me. You had flickering torches and silence, and suddenly a hidden passage opened when I interacted with some random statue. And these little things really kept it engaging for me. And it really still works today, because it makes you feel like you discovered something on your own instead of the game holding your hand. So yeah, the story isn't flawless, it feels sometimes dated, but the setting is what carries it. This mix of mystery and the exploration makes it pretty addicting. I thought to myself 2 days ago, I'll just play an hour and go to bed, but I kept playing. But I mean this in the best possible way. You want to keep progressing the story and explore the world. Alright, so let's talk about the gameplay itself, the meat and the potatoes. So, Strange Antiquities is pretty different from its usual action-heavy stuff. It's all about the careful observation and connecting the dots. The gameplay loop basically goes a bit like this. You inspect weird objects, you dig through your books for lore, you match some patterns and clues, and then use this knowledge to help a customer or unlock the next step in the story. For example, there was a customer who came in the shop and brought in what looked like a bronze idol, but the closer I looked, the more I noticed things. You had scratches on the base and a faint discoloration. And once I cross-referenced this with the dusty tome I had in the shop, it completely changed the case. And these little click moments feel amazing, like you've just cracked a real mystery. That said, it's not without its clunk. The interface can feel slow at times, especially when you're flipping back and forth between artifacts and books. And on console, the controls are definitely less intuitive than on PC. I had a couple of times where I knew the answer in my head, but I was fumbling around in the menus trying to make the game acknowledge it. This can pull you a bit out of the immersive feel. But overall, the puzzles, the exploration sections still hold up because they lean into your curiosity. When you're wandering through a crypt trying to piece together clues from carvings on the wall, the game really nails this sense of discovery. It's definitely not fast-paced, but that's kind of the charm. It forces you to slow down and actually pay attention to your environment. So let's talk about the visuals. Strange Antiquities really surprised me on its visuals. It's not pushing crazy high-end graphics, but it leans more into this moody, handcrafted style that still works today. The lighting especially does a lot of the heavy lifting. When you're in the shop at night and the lanterns cast these long, flickering shadows across the shelves, stacked with relics, it instantly pulls you into this dusty, mysterious vibe. It felt like when you look at a nice painting and the longer and the more you look at it, the more details you see. Now, if you're coming from more modern, flashy AAA games, you'll definitely notice that the textures and the models aren't exactly cutting edge. I also noticed that a few character animations looked a bit stiff. There was this one scholar NPC I kept running into who looked like he hadn't blinked in like 200 years. This can also break the immersion a bit if you really focus on it, but honestly, the art direction carries so much weight that the technical limitations don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. The muted color palette, the way the dust floats in the air when you disturb an old relic, and even the grain in the wood of the shop counter, all of it sells the nice atmosphere. It's one of those cases where style ages better than realism, and in my playthrough, I never once felt like I was looking at an old game. And now let's talk about the sound design, because honestly it does a lot of the heavy lifting. Maybe even more than the visuals in some places. The music isn't one of these big bombastic things you'll find in modern RPGs sometimes, but it knows exactly when to sneak up on you. There's a low, almost humming theme that kicks in when you're piecing together clues, and it makes you feel like you've suddenly become the smartest archaeologist alive. That is, until you realize you've been stuck on the same puzzle for 20 minutes. The music never is overwhelming, it's just quietly and sets the mood. And when it fades out, you notice how much you relied on it to keep the tension alive. Apart from the music, the ambient sounds is where the game really shines. Creaking floorboards in the shop, a metallic scrape of an ancient lock giving way, or muffled wind echoing through the underground ruins. It's these little moments that kept me hooked. For example, there was a moment where I swore I heard some whispering behind me in a tomb. I spun around in panic and there was nothing there. So it's actively messing with you while playing the game, but in the best way possible. And last but not least, the voice acting is a bit of a mixed bag. Some characters felt genuinely alive, like the grumpy shopkeeper, who sounds like he's seen one relic too many, but others can feel flat, almost like they're reading off a script. It doesn't really ruin the experience, but it can pull you out of the moment. But still, even paired with the atmosphere, the music and the effects, it's enough to make you lean forward in your chair without realizing it. Now, let's talk about the most important part. Is it worth buying? So, when I saw the game about $18, I thought, okay, that's pretty reasonable. For what this game has to offer, it feels pretty fair, especially compared to newer titles that charge $60 plus for less depth. In my playthrough, I felt like I got my money's worth after maybe 5 to 6 hours just exploring the shop and hunting artifacts. Now, if I have to compare it to similar games in this genre, like its predecessor Strange Horticulture, or other indie puzzle adventure games, Strange Antiquities is offering more polish and more variety for roughly the same price. That said, there are caveats. If you aren't into slower paced games, like ones that make you really stop, read and think, this might feel a bit pricey. Also, on platforms like the Switch, you lose a bit of fluidity in controls and UI. If this game was 20 or 30% off, I'd say grab it immediately. But even at full price, if you enjoy mystery and puzzle games, this is one of those indie games that delivers pretty good value in 2025. So, to wrap things up, after spending my time with Strange Antiquities, I say it's absolutely worth checking out in 2025. If you know what you're walking into, it's not a flashy, action-packed game, but it's a more thoughtful, puzzle-heavy experience that rewards your patience and your curiosity. And if you love Strange Horticulture, you will probably get some nostalgia and an instant hit of the same vibe. So now you know if it's still worth buying in 2025. If you liked the video, please subscribe. Until next time, and thank you for watching.